Tonight at 10, the biggest review of maternity services in NHS history finds catastrophic failures that led to the deaths of hundreds of babies. Families torn apart by repeated failures in maternity care at Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust over a period of 20 years.
Really like now some space to grieve and actually put down the fight and grieve my child, because I haven't been able to do that properly yet.
The Health Secretary has apologised to the families for the unimaginable trauma they've suffered and promised changes at local and national level. Good evening. The biggest review of maternity services in NHS history has found that catastrophic failures at Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust led to the deaths and injuries of hundreds of babies and mothers. The review by the senior midwife, Donna Ockenden, was initially tasked with looking into the deaths of 20 babies, but that grew to nearly 1,600 cases over a 20-year period from 2000 to 2019. Today's findings show that repeated failures in maternity care led to the deaths of more than 200 babies. 9 mothers also lost their lives, and 94 children were left with life-changing injuries. Donna Ockenden says the Trust often failed to investigate babies' deaths, and she also highlighted concerns about present-day care. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has apologised and is promising to make changes at a local and national level. Here's our Social Affairs correspondent, Michael Buchanan.
They're not just taking people's babies away. They're taking away Christmases, birthdays, everything.
Year after year, for 2 decades, children that should have thrived never made it to school. Entire classrooms were never filled. Whole lives were never lived.
I get to spend the rest of my life going, what if, what if, what if?
At least 201 babies, including Pippa, Jack and Kate, might have survived with better maternity care.
The criticism of this hospital trust is comprehensive, and it is absolutely what we have experienced and what we've been saying all along.
The failings of this trust are unprecedented. They ignored the wishes of women, failed to properly monitor mothers and babies, and didn't investigate when errors occurred.
It is clear that major issues in safety were apparent in both midwifery-led unit and consultant settings. Unfortunately, these cases were not isolated incidents, and through the time span of our review, we have found repeated errors in care which led to injury to either mothers or their babies.
For these 2 families who instigated the review after their children died, the report is a vindication of their efforts.
For me, it's just bittersweet that we are missing daughters that should be with us today, because their avoidable deaths were exactly that, avoidable, and we were lied to all the way through.
11-year-old Adam Cheshire is profoundly disabled after developing an infection shortly after birth. At least 94 children, say the review, were left with life-changing injuries such as cerebral palsy due to poor treatment. Adam's mother believes he's one of them.
If they had induced me sooner, because natural labour wasn't starting, if they had monitored him appropriately after his birth, if they had made sure he fed, if they had even taken me seriously when I was saying there's something wrong, that's why I believe they're responsible for not all those warning signs that they missed.
In the Commons today, England's Health Secretary Sajid Javid said the review made for harrowing reading.
This report is a devastating account of bedrooms that are empty, families that are bereft, and loved ones taken before their time. We will act swiftly so that no families have to go through the same pain in the future.
9 women who died in childbirth might also have survived with better care, but these are not historical problems. The review team have significant concerns about ongoing maternity services. The head of the trust for the past 2 years apologised for the failings.
When you became chief executive of this trust, this was the #1 issue before the trust. For there to be avoidable errors of the type that are described in this report, repeated at your trust, what does that say about your leadership?
It is clear there's been significant failings in the organisation.
Including on your watch?
and we have made significant improvement. However, we've got a lot more to go.
But babies have died in avoidable circumstances while you've been the chief executive of this trust.
And where there have been incidents and issues, what I can say is that we are thoroughly investigating those circumstances.
Having had their concerns repeatedly ignored, today the families thanked the woman they felt had revealed the true scale of the Trust's failings. But it was more a moment of relief than celebration.
I would really like now some space to grieve and actually put down the fight and grieve my child, because I haven't been able to do that properly yet.
Michael, you've covered this story from the very beginning, and one wonders tonight, those in charge at the Trust at the time, what happens to them?
Well, I asked Louise Barnett today, she as the chief executive has been for the past 2 years, whether she was going to resign, and she said she wasn't going to. It's important to stress that the problems of this trust were not caused by one long-standing chief executive of one poor leadership team. There have been 10 chief executives here over the past 20 years. Now, the families would argue that many of them have been of poor quality, but the review team says that that churn perhaps meant that nobody was actually able to get to grips with the appalling culture and the poor practices that are evident here. There will undoubtedly be questions as to what happens at this trust going forward, given the strong concerns about ongoing maternity care. But despite the appalling failures here, it would be wrong to suggest that this is the only maternity service with problems. Some of the issues here, such as poor training, a bullying, toxic culture, have allegedly been heard as well in Nottingham and East Kent, where there are reviews into their maternity services as well. So there is a sense, that, certainly from Donna Ockenden, that there is more attention on maternity care than there has ever been, and that there are now real chances for improvement if NHS leaders want to follow them through.
Sure. OK. Michael, many thanks for your reporting. Michael Buchanan there in Shrewsbury. And if you've been affected by any of this, details of organisations offering information and support are available at bbc.co.uk/actionline, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information. That's on 08 000 155 998.